If it weren't for the dog, no one would have known. It was supposed to be a picture-perfect evening, an elegant charity auction at the historic Willow Creek Auction House, just outside of Denver, Colorado. Inside, chandeliers sparkled overhead. Wine glasses clinked and old money mingled with new ambitions. But by 9:07 p.m., a German shepherd in a black K9 vest lunged across the marble floor and pinned a millionaire to the ground in front of 200 stunned guests. No one could understand why. The man, Richard Langford, wasn't just any guest. He was one of the evening's biggest donors. A tech mogul turned philanthropist. His face had graced magazines, his voice had opened galas. That night he was all smiles and handshakes, until he picked up his leather duffel bag and made his way toward the exit. That's when the dog snapped. "Hey, get him off me!" Richard screamed as the dog snarled, pawing and digging at the bag slung across his shoulder. Security rushed in. Cameras flashed. Guests gasped and froze. A woman dropped her wine glass, but the dog didn't let go. Not until Officer Rachel Monroe issued the command with the authority only a seasoned K9 handler could deliver. "Tighten off." Tighten hesitated. For a breathless second, his growl deepened. Then he released his grip and sat, eyes locked on the bag as if daring it to move. Richard scrambled to his feet, brushing off his tailored suit, red-faced and fuming. "Your dog is out of control," he barked at Monroe. "I want him removed. Immediately." Officer Monroe narrowed her eyes, hands calmly resting on her duty belt. She wasn't new to this, and neither was Tighten. "Sir," she said evenly, "I'm going to need you to come with me." It had all happened in under 60 seconds. The media would later loop the moment over and over, Tighten lunging, Richard screaming, guests backing away in stunned silence. But in that moment, nobody watching had the faintest idea what the dog had, sensed, or what would come of it. In the auction house lobby, Richard sat in a leather chair, fidgeting with the strap of his bag. Officer Monroe stood in front of him, arms crossed, her partner, another officer named Daniels, hovering nearby. "For the record," Richard said, trying to regain his composure, "I've supported law enforcement for years, donated hundreds of thousands. I expect better treatment than this." Monroe nodded but said nothing. "I was leaving," Richard added. "I didn't do anything. That dog, he just went crazy. There's nothing in the bag." Her eyes flicked to the bag. "Then you won't mind if we take a look?" "I do mind, actually. That's private property. I have legal rights." "That's fine," Monroe said, signaling to Daniels. "We'll call it in." Richard stiffened. "Call in what?" "Your bag just triggered a federal K9 trained in biological scent detection. That's not something we ignore." Richard leaned forward. "Biological what?" "You heard me." For a moment, the millionaire just sat there, eyes wide, hands frozen on the leather strap of the duffel. Then something changed. A flicker, barely noticeable. But Monroe caught it. So did Tighten, still sitting, still watching, ears perked like radar. Want to see more gripping animal stories like this one? Don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals on YouTube. Your support helps us share the truth about the brave creatures who save lives in the most unexpected ways. Outside, the mood had shifted. Guests were ushered out. Police tape had gone up. What had been a glamorous evening now felt more like a crime scene. Monroe walked outside and radioed for federal backup. It might have seemed excessive. After all, what was the big deal? A bag? A dog? A misunderstanding? But Monroe had been on the job for 12 years, and she'd learned one thing the hard way. Tighten never made mistakes. Not when he barked, not when he lunged, and especially not when he stared down a man like he'd seen a ghost. Richard Langford sat, alone now in a private interview room inside the local precinct. The bag sat on the metal table in front of him, untouched. Officers had secured the perimeter, and federal agents from the Denver FBI field office were en route. It wasn't just protocol. It was gut instinct, and the gut of a canine dog that had once located the shallow grave of a missing girl in New Mexico. After 3 other units had failed, this time Titan had gone ballistic over a duffel bag. There had to be a reason. Back at the auction house, Officer Daniels checked the security feed. "There," he said, pointing at the screen. "Watch closely." He picks up the bag, takes 1 step toward the door, and then Titan reacts, Monroe said quietly. "Instantly." Daniels nodded. "That's not drugs, that's not explosives. You think biological trace?" Monroe didn't answer right away. She was watching Titan on the screen, every muscle taut, every movement precise. He'd been different since the Arizona case. She couldn't explain it, but ever since they worked that missing persons call, Titan had been alert, as if something had changed in the way he saw the world, like he'd smelled a truth no one else could. And tonight, he'd smelled it again. At 10:32 p.m., the FBI arrived. The agents came in without ceremony, 3 of them, plainclothes, quiet, efficient. They'd been briefed en route. They asked no questions, just requested the bag and a secure room. Richard refused to speak. His lawyer had arrived and demanded the release of personal property, but the lead agent had already made the call. The bag would be examined under federal warrant. "Something's off," he muttered under his breath, reviewing Monroe's report. "Dogs don't attack millionaires in front of cameras unless they're damn sure." The room fell silent as the agent slowly unzipped the bag. And then he stopped. No one said a word, because what they saw inside wasn't what anyone expected. Agent David Keene had seen war zones, cartel tunnels, and more crime scenes than he could count. But when he opened Richard Langford's duffel bag and saw what lay inside, he didn't move for 5 full seconds. A single child's shoe, pink canvas, dirty, torn laces, faded rainbow decal on the side. Tucked beside it was a plush rabbit, matted with age, 1 ear missing, a smear of what looked like dried blood crusted across its chest. Everyone in the room just stood there. The air turned cold. Even the fluorescent lighting above felt suddenly too harsh, the kind of sterile brightness that made bad things look worse. "This yours?" Keene finally asked, holding the shoe up with gloved hands. Langford didn't speak. He just stared at it, his expression flat, unreadable. His lawyer, a sharp-looking man in a navy suit, leaned in immediately. "My client is under no obligation to answer that. This search violates—" "Save it," Keene cut him off. "We've got a K-9 hit, federal jurisdiction, and now we've got something that might belong to a missing person. This is no longer a misunderstanding." He bagged the shoe and stuffed rabbit into evidence sleeves while another agent snapped, "Photographs." Langford's face had gone pale. "What's going on here, Richard?" the lawyer whispered. "You didn't tell me anything about this." Still, Langford said nothing. Back in the parking lot of Willow Creek, Officer Monroe watched Titan pace in circles near the patrol car. He was restless, ears twitching, tail stiff. That wasn't normal for him. Monroe had worked with dogs her whole career, but Titan was special, sharp, disciplined, intuitive. And right now, he was more agitated than she'd ever seen him. She opened the back door and Titan leapt out, nose low to the ground, sniffing toward the side of the building. Without waiting for a command, he led her to the alley behind the auction house. There, beside a rusted drainpipe, Titan stopped cold. He sniffed once, then let out a low growl. "What is it, boy?" Monroe crouched beside him. Her flashlight swept across the area. Just asphalt, weeds, a tipped-over trash can. But then she saw it. A small patch of fabric caught on the jagged edge of the metal gutter. Pink. Just like the shoe. She called it in immediately. By the next morning, the story had already hit local news. K-9 officer attacks millionaire at gala, Childs. Items found in bag. The media ran with it, but no one had the full picture yet. Monroe knew better than to speculate, especially with the FBI taking over, but she couldn't shake the feeling in her gut. Something about the way Langford reacted. Not shocked, not confused, just cold. She remembered Titan's reaction again. The bark hadn't been aggressive, it was desperate. Like he was trying to say, "Look, please. Someone look." Agent Keene returned to the FBI field office and pulled up an old database of unsolved missing children cases. He fed the photo of the shoe and plush rabbit into the system. The software took about 15 minutes, cross-referencing hundreds of files. Then it hit. Match found. Case. Birth 3842. Name. Emily Carmichael. Age at disappearance, 6 years old. Date missing. August 12, 2018. Last seen. Denver, CO. Public park near Cherry Creek. The file showed a smiling girl with freckles, missing her 2 front teeth, holding what looked like the same stuffed bunny. Keene's blood ran cold. Emily had vanished 7 years ago. The case had gone cold after just 3 months. There were no suspects, no leads, no remains, no evidence. Until now. Meanwhile, at the precinct, Langford still hadn't said a word. His lawyer had been on the phone all morning, but federal hold orders had been issued. Until the FBI determined the bag's connection to a missing child, Langford wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't just a matter of ownership anymore. It was a matter of intent. Why would a millionaire, with no children of his own, be carrying a child's shoe and a blood-stained toy rabbit in a bag he refused to let go of? And why did a K-9 unit immediately respond to it? Keene scheduled an emergency meeting with the parents of Emily Carmichael. They were divorced now. Her mother lived in Fort Collins. The father had moved to Arizona. The mother arrived first. When she saw the photo of the shoe, she broke down. "That's hers," she whispered. "I remember, and she wore that exact pair when she disappeared. They had the rainbow patches. She loved those." Keene asked if she recognized the stuffed animal. She sobbed harder. She called him Mr. Buttons. The FBI now had probable cause. Keene filed for a search warrant of Langford's estate. Richard Langford lived in a gated mansion 30 miles outside of Denver. It was secluded, surrounded by trees with a private drive and security cameras on every corner. But what made the place stand out wasn't just its size. It was what lay beneath it. Years earlier, Langford had filed permits to build a wine cellar. Nothing suspicious on the surface. But when agents reviewed blueprints obtained from the city, they noticed inconsistencies. Blocked out rooms, unexplained wiring, a secondary stairwell that led nowhere. The team arrived just before sunset. Inside the house, everything was pristine. Clean floors, empty rooms, white furniture with no signs of wear. But beneath the floorboards in the main hallway, they found a panel that didn't match the rest of the wood. They pried it open. A narrow set of stairs led downward into complete darkness. Titan descended first. The air was thick and stale. Concrete. Walls, no windows, and a single bulb flickering overhead. At the bottom, the team found a door, steel reinforced. The lock had already begun to rust, but the hinges were strong. Inside was a small room, maybe 8 by 10 feet. On one side, a child's mattress. The walls were covered with chalk drawings, stick figures, trees, stars, and on the far wall, scrawled in a shaky hand, were the words, "I want to go home." There were no bodies, no blood, no direct signs of violence. But what was there was enough. Keene felt his stomach churn. Who had been down here, and how long? Back at the precinct, Langford was finally alone. No lawyer, no cameras. Just him and a steaming cup of black coffee. Agent Keene stepped into the room, closed the door quietly behind him, and sat across the table. "Tell me about Emily Carmichael." Langford looked up slowly. "I haven't heard that name in years," he said, calmly. "You shouldn't have heard it at all." Langford smiled faintly. "That depends on who you talk to." Keene leaned forward. "You want to explain why her blood is on a toy in your bag? Why your dog cellar has drawings that match her handwriting? Or how your estate lines up with a last seen witness statement from 2018? Langford didn't blink. "What happens next?" Keen stood. You tell us everything, or we find out ourselves. Outside the interrogation room, Monroe stood next to Titan, who was finally calm again. He sat by the hallway bench, tail flicking once, then still. She knelt down beside him and scratched his ear. You did good, buddy, she whispered. You found her. Or at least, a piece of her. Titan licked her hand once and then went. Back to staring at the door Langford was behind, as if he knew. This wasn't over, not even close. The room was too quiet. Agent David Keen hated rooms like this. The kind where people had seen too much and said too little. The kind where the silence felt loud. Across the table sat Richard Langford, tech tycoon, philanthropist, public icon, and now the center of a federal investigation tied to a missing girl. Keen had done this long enough to know one thing for sure. Monsters rarely looked the part. Langford didn't fidget, didn't sweat. His suit was still crisp, his hair combed, back like nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and he knew it. So, Keen said evenly, why don't you tell me how Emily Carmichael's shoe and her blood-stained toy rabbit ended up in your possession? Langford blinked slowly, like the question bored. Him. I didn't hurt her, he said. I never touched her. That's not an answer. It's the truth. Keen leaned back, hands folded. You've got 5 minutes before the FBI requests a full excavation of your property. If there's anything else you want to tell me before we start tearing up your home inch by inch, now's the time. Langford tilted his head slightly. Then, he said, almost as if reciting a memory, she used to hum when she was scared. Keen's jaw tightened. Excuse me? She was small, Langford went on, voice low. Could barely reach the sink. But she was smart. Too smart for her own good. She kept asking questions. Why am I here? Where's my mom? When can I go outside? I told her it was temporary, that everything would be okay. Keen didn't interrupt. Langford continued. She didn't believe me, of course, they never do, but she was brave. Braver than I expected. There it was. They. That one word lit up in Keen's mind like a siren. How many girls, Richard? He asked quietly. Langford didn't answer. Meanwhile, Officer Rachel Monroe stood with Titan at the edge of Langford's property. The FBI's forensic team was already combing the perimeter. Every inch of the cellar had been photographed and sampled, but Monroe couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. Titan hadn't barked once since they left the basement, but now, as they stood outside near the eastern tree line, he let out a low growl. Then he started walking. Where are you going, boy? Monroe muttered, following. They moved past the main lawn, through a thicket of oaks and brush. The grass grew patchier. Roots rose like warning signs. 30 yards in, Titan stopped beside a pile of old cinder blocks. Monroe looked down. There, half buried under leaves and mud, was a rusted metal hatch. Back at FBI headquarters, Keen was reviewing the last known images of Emily Carmichael from 2018. A surveillance camera had captured her walking along a bike path with her father, just minutes before she vanished. The man had turned away to take a call. Emily had pedaled ahead on a pink scooter. She was never seen again. There had been rumors, of course. A white van spotted nearby. A man with sunglasses loitering at the parks. None of it stuck. The father had been cleared, the mother devastated. The case went cold like so many others, until now. The photos from Langford's bunker, those chalk drawings, the mattress, the rabbit, they told a story the system had forgotten. But Titan hadn't. He never forgot a scent. At the hatch, Monroe radioed in for backup before opening it. With help, she lifted the rusted cover and descended a set of concrete stairs. This second space was smaller than the first, darker, colder. A single light flickered from a battery-powered lantern on the ground and scrawled across the wall in crayon. Not the first, not the last. Monroe's breath caught. Titan was pacing again. Agitated, she turned to the agents with her. "Get forensics down here now." Langford sat in the interview room, hands folded neatly, as if he were still in a board meeting. "You think I'm a monster," he said to Keene. "You think I'm the end of the story." Keene didn't blink. "You're the beginning." Langford chuckled. "I'm not the first. And I'm definitely not the last. There are others, ones you won't find. Not in time." "Where is she now?" Keene asked. Silence. Keene's tone hardened. "Emily. Is she dead?" Langford's eyes flicked toward the mirrored wall, then back to Keene. "She got away." The phrase "got away" echoed in the room like a gunshot. Keene felt the air shift. "You're saying she escaped?" "I'm saying I lost control of the situation. She wasn't supposed to leave. She was supposed to be transferred. But she figured it out. Got through the grate one night, took off barefoot. We searched, but nothing. Figured she was dead within a day." "Where did this happen?" Langford stared. "Where?" Langford finally whispered. "Arizona." Keene's heart pounded. Arizona? The name hit like a lightning bolt. Titan had been deployed in Arizona 2 years ago, on a joint operation to investigate suspected human trafficking across a rural ranch property. The case had ended abruptly, lack of evidence, but Titan had refused to leave a storage unit on that property. He barked, scratched, refused food. No remains were ever found. But what if that wasn't the end? What if it was a crossing point? Keene walked out of the room without a word. He dialed Monroe. "Get Titan back to that Arizona ranch now." "What's going on?" she asked. Langford didn't kill her. Not according to him. "Then where is she?" "Somewhere we already looked." It took the team less than 12 hours to get boots on the ground. The Arizona property was still vacant, owned by a shell corporation that Langford's lawyers conveniently couldn't trace. Titan stepped out of the black SUV and immediately lowered his nose to the ground. He pulled Monroe across the yard, past the old trailer, to a fence line that bordered a dry creek bed. Then he stopped, sniffed, and bolted. They found her less than 2 miles in, living in a makeshift shack built from discarded lumber and tarp. She was older now, thinner. But her eyes, those same green eyes from the 2018 flyer, locked on Titan with a jolt of recognition. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She smiled. "Mr. Dog," she whispered. Titan licked her hand once and sat. Emily. Carmichael was alive. Scarred. Weathered. But alive. The case shattered headlines across the country. Missing girl found alive after 7 years, thanks to Police K9. The dog who remembered. Langford was indicted on federal charges. His lawyer disappeared from the public eye. The FBI launched a broader investigation into a possible trafficking network, and Titan became a national hero. Back in Colorado, Monroe sat with Emily on a park bench near a small lake. Emily sipped hot cocoa. Titan lay at her feet, content. "Did you know he remembered you?" Monroe asked. Emily nodded. "He barked like that once, and when he was leaving, like he didn't want to go. I hoped he'd come back." Monroe wiped a tear from her cheek. "Well," she said, smiling softly, "he did." The morning after Emily, Carmichael was found. The news trucks lined up like vultures. Satellite dishes cluttered the sky outside the Phoenix Children's Hospital. Cameramen shouted from behind security gates. Headlines raced across screens like ticker tape at a stock exchange. Miracle in Arizona. Years missing. Found by dog. Tech mogul under federal investigation in child captivity case inside. The hospital. It was quieter, but not by much. Doctors moved in and out of the hallway with tight expressions and clipboards clutched to their chests. Nurses whispered in small huddles. No one said it aloud, but they were all thinking the same thing. How did she survive? Emily was stable, but frail. underweight, dehydrated and visibly scarred on her legs and arms. Her fingernails were cracked. Her hair hadn't been cut in years. But she was alert. She answered questions. And she remembered everything. Agent. Keene sat beside her bed, notebook open, but he wasn't writing yet. "Do you want to stop?" he asked gently. Emily shook her head. "I don't want to forget." "Okay," he said, voice calm. "Can we go back to the beginning when you left the park?" She looked out the window for a long second, then said, "There was a man in a baseball cap. I thought he was someone my dad knew. He said my scooter had a problem and he could fix." Keene's hand tightened around his pen. "He said he worked for the city," Emily added. "That I shouldn't tell my dad or it'd ruin the surprise. Then I don't remember anything until I woke up in the dark." That dark place, she said, was the cellar in Langford's Colorado estate. The FBI ran the timeline over and over. Emily had been missing for over 2,400 days. According to her testimony, she had spent the first 2 years in Colorado, hidden beneath the millionaire's home. She was moved to Arizona after she escaped once. Punishment, Langford allegedly said. He didn't want her getting clever again. She'd lived in a series of safe houses tied to Langford's network. Tiny storage units, sheds, and eventually, the shack where she was found. Her survival wasn't just luck. It was resourcefulness. And something else. Titan. She described him perfectly from memory, his vest, his bark, even the scar behind his right ear from a training injury. "He sniffed my hand," she told Monroe once. "That first day. Then they took him away. But he came back. I knew he would." Meanwhile, Richard Langford's case was expanding. Investigators found encrypted files on his home server, names, dates, and what appeared to be transaction logs. Money exchanged. Children delivered. Locations marked only by codenames. The term transfer complete showed up over 80 times. More than a dozen names on the list matched missing child reports across 5 states. Langford had stayed clean for years, laundering everything through real estate, private charities, even political donations. He looked like every other aging tech entrepreneur who'd decided to give back. But under the surface, his empire had rotted, and he wasn't working alone. While the investigation spread, America watched. Talk shows ran segments on child trafficking. Hashtags trended. Petitions circulated. But the one face that never left the screen was Titan's, the police dog who remembered. Titan appeared in viral videos, fan art, even a children's book within 2 weeks. News anchors called him a hero. Animal rights groups campaigned for him to receive the K9 Medal of Honor. He didn't seem to care about any of it. He just stayed close to Emily. When Monroe visited the hospital, Titan would stand guard near the door like a silent protector. Emily would rest her hand on his head, sometimes just watching the way he breathed. Steady, calm, safe. It was the one thing in her life that hadn't changed. One afternoon, Monroe arrived to find Emily alone, sitting up in bed with the TV muted. Titan lay curled at her feet. "Hey, sweet pea," Monroe said softly. "Mind if I sit?" Emily nodded. "He missed you." Monroe smiled and ran her fingers through Titan's fur. "I missed him too." They sat for a moment in comfortable silence before Emily asked, "Do I have to go back home?" Monroe hesitated. "Your mom wants to see you. So does your dad. You don't have to decide anything today, but they love you." Emily looked down at her hands. "I'm scared they won't know me." "They don't have to know all of you today," Monroe said. "They'll learn again. One hug at a time." A week later, Emily's mother came. It wasn't like the movies. No dramatic embraces, no swelling music. Just 2 people who hadn't seen each other in 7 years, sitting quietly, breathing the same air again. Emily didn't cry. She didn't have to. Her mother wept enough for both of them. That same day, Monroe got a call from Keene. "We just Traced another IP, he said. This time to Nevada. One of the servers used to upload the files was live as recently as 3 days ago. You think there are more kids? I don't think. I know. Monroe clenched her jaw. Tell me when to pack. Titan and I are in. Back in her hospital room, Emily sat with Titan at her side and a small notebook in her lap. She was drawing, again, stars, clouds, a tree with big roots. She pointed to the drawing and said, "This is the one from outside the fence in Arizona." Monroe studied it. You remember that? Emily nodded. I used to sit by the window and count the leaves. It made me feel like I still had time. Time for what? To leave. Later that night, Monroe took Titan out for a walk in the hospital garden. It was quiet. Most visitors had gone home and the sky glowed purple in the last stretch of daylight. You did good, partner, she whispered. You didn't just find her, you knew. Before any of us did. Titan didn't bark. He just walked beside her step by step as if he'd never once doubted the path. But the case wasn't closed. Langford had been indicted, yes. His assets frozen, his reputation shattered. But he hadn't given up names. He hadn't confirmed who they were, the network he hinted at, the ones he said were still out there. And he had one more condition. He'd talk. But only to Emily. When Keene called with the request, Monroe nearly dropped the phone. You're not serious. He says he'll give us everything. Names, drop points, servers. But only if she speaks to him. She's a kid. She's the only one he's afraid of. Monroe looked at Titan lying under her desk at the station and felt something twist in her gut. He's afraid of what she remembers, she said. Keene didn't disagree. She's the key, he said. But I won't make her do anything. It's up to her. That night, Monroe sat on Emily's hospital bed, flipping through the drawings. They were sharper now, more focused. As if her memory was returning in lines and shadows. Emily, she said. Richard Langford wants to talk. Emily didn't look up. He said he'll give us everything if you speak to him, but only if you want to. There was a long pause. Then Emily whispered, Can Titan come with me? Monroe smiled softly. He'll be right by your side. The meeting took place in a federal facility just outside Denver. No cameras, no press, no distractions. Only what mattered, a child, a criminal, a room that smelled like cold metal and quiet dread. Emily Carmichael walked in wearing jeans, a pale hoodie, and sneakers too new to feel comfortable. Her hair had been trimmed, her cheeks fuller than they were 2 weeks ago. But her eyes, they were the same. Focused, watchful, unblinking. Titan walked beside her, his canine vest zipped snug. No leash, no hesitation. His ears were high, his gaze locked forward. He could sense everything that Emily didn't say. And at the far end of the room, shackled at the wrists and ankles, sat Richard Langford. He didn't look like a monster. That was the problem. He looked like someone's uncle. Someone's neighbor. Someone who should have been sitting on a yacht, not a concrete bench under federal lights. Emily sat down across from him. No one else spoke. Langford's eyes flicked down to Titan first. Still loyal, he murmured. He's not loyal to you, Emily said. Her voice was soft but steady. Langford gave a small smile. You've grown. Emily stared. You remembered me, she said. All these years. Langford didn't answer. She leaned forward slightly. Why me? He shrugged. You were supposed to be temporary, just part of a message. But you were smart. You listened. You didn't scream. I screamed every night. Langford's jaw clenched just for a second. You weren't supposed to survive, no one does usually, but then you escaped. And that changed everything. In the observation room behind the mirrored glass, Agent David Keene stood with Monroe and two other FBI agents. They watched in silence as Emily did what no interrogator could: break a man without raising her voice. "She's incredible," Monroe whispered. Keene nodded. "This is the first time he's shown any emotion in 2 months." Monroe glanced at Titan sitting beside Emily like a stone statue. "He knows she's safe, that's all he needs." Back in the room, Langford shifted. "I didn't hurt you," he said again, quieter this time. "You took me," Emily replied. "You locked me underground. You moved me around like a package." "That's hurting, Richard." Langford looked down. "They wanted you gone." "Who's they?" He hesitated. "You said there were others," Emily continued. "You told Agent Keene you weren't the last. So who are they?" Langford leaned back. "They don't use names, only locations, transfers, everything's coded." "Then decode it." He studied her. "I'll talk," he said finally, "but only if you listen." "I'm here," Emily replied. "Start talking." Over the next 2 hours, Langford gave the FBI everything they had hoped for, and more. He described locations: warehouses in Nevada, farmhouses in Idaho, a private marina off the coast of Oregon. He named 3 handlers, 2 of whom were ex-military. He described the digital code names used for transactions and how victims were tagged in a private dark web archive, known only as the Nursery. Each revelation was more horrifying than the last. Langford didn't even flinch, but Emily did. Once, when he said the name Rowan, her breath caught in her throat. Keene noticed it immediately through the glass. He grabbed a pen, circled the name, and underlined it twice. After the meeting, Emily was escorted out of the room with Titan by her side. She didn't speak until she was in the hallway. Monroe walked beside her. "You okay?" Monroe asked. Emily nodded slowly. "I don't want to be afraid of him anymore." Monroe placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not. You beat him the moment you walked in there." Emily looked up. "He said a name. Rowan." Monroe's brow furrowed. "Does that mean something to you?" Emily nodded. "She was the girl before me." That night, Keene dove into archived case files. He found it. Rowan Lee Carter. Disappeared July 3, 2017. Age 10. Last seen outside a foster care facility in Boise, Idaho. The case had gone cold fast. No witnesses, no cameras, no suspects. But her name was on Langford's transfer list. Transaction completed. 007.04. 17. The FBI expanded their investigation. Raids were authorized across 3 states. Warrants sealed and opened within 48 hours. Monroe was called in with Titan for a joint task force operation in Idaho, Langford's final confirmed location before his arrest. At sunrise, they hit the target, an abandoned orchard house near Twin Falls. Titan led the way, nose twitching, muscles tight. He stopped at a shed near the edge of the property, then barked, loud, once, and then again. Monroe kicked the door in with a flash team behind her. Inside, beneath a tarp, they found a steel trapdoor. It took a blowtorch to cut through the lock. Below, in a sub-level room, barely 6 feet wide, was a girl, not more than 13, pale, thin, eyes blinking in disbelief. "My name's Rowan," she whispered. "Are you real?" Monroe knelt beside her, voice trembling. "We're real, and we're taking you home." Rowan looked at Titan. "Is that the dog from the stories?" Monroe smiled through tears. "That's the one." Rowan's rescue changed everything. The media exploded again. Lawmakers began demanding reform. FBI analysts traced more names from Langford's database, and with each arrest, each location cleared, the story grew bigger. What began with one girl's rescue was now a national reckoning. Emily visited Rowan in the hospital a week later. They didn't speak at first. They just stared at each other, eyes locked, both searching for pieces of themselves in the other. "I thought I was the only one," Rowan finally whispered. Emily nodded. "Me too." Titan curled up at their feet. He knew better. There were more. In a closed congressional hearing in Washington, D.C., Agent Keene testified about the case. "It started with a bark," he told the room. "One dog who knew something was wrong before any of us did, and a girl who had the strength to come back and tell us where to look next." A senator leaned forward. "You really believe this is just the beginning?" Keene didn't hesitate. "I know it is." Back home, Monroe sat on her porch with Titan lying beside her. The stars were out. The wind was calm, but her mind was racing. She looked down at Titan. "You knew, didn't you? That first night at the auction. You smelled it. You saw past his suit and smile." Titan didn't respond. He didn't have to. She placed a hand on his back, feeling the steady rhythm of his breath. A reminder that sometimes the heroes aren't the ones in capes, or even in uniform. Sometimes they walk on four legs and never forget. 6 weeks had passed since Rowan Carter was rescued. Her name joined a growing list of survivors. Girls, and boys once considered lost forever, now returned because one canine dog had refused to let go of a scent. His name was Titan. And across America, people couldn't stop talking about him. There were murals painted in his honor. An animated series in development. A toy company donated thousands of plush German shepherds to children's hospitals in his likeness. But Titan didn't care for fame. He didn't need it. His job was never about recognition. It was about finding the lost. At the Colorado State Capitol, lawmakers held a ceremony in Titan's honor. Cameras clicked as he received the National Medal of Valor for Service Animals. Monroe stood beside him in full dress uniform, holding his leash proudly. "He's not just a dog," she told the crowd. "He's living proof that listening to the quietest instincts can save lives." Emily was there too, sitting in the front row next to Rowan. Both girls wore matching pins that read, "I was found." They stood for the applause, hand in hand. After the ceremony, Monroe took Titan to a quiet trail near the outskirts of Boulder. It was their routine now. No noise, no interviews, just pine trees and silence. "You've earned this," she whispered, tossing a ball into the brush. Titan chased it and returned with perfect form. "You never stop," she laughed. "Not for a minute." But even as she smiled, her heart weighed heavy. Because while Langford had confessed and multiple raids had uncovered dozens of files and former handlers, the list wasn't complete. There were gaps, unanswered names. One of them was simply marked D13. Keene believed it was another child, possibly the last. Back at the Denver FBI office, Keene stood before a task force board with pinned photos, arrows, and notes scribbled in red ink. He turned to Monroe. "Do you think Titan could track one more?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "If there's a scent, he'll find it. Even if it's years old?" He found Emily with less. Keene opened a file. "We've got something new. There's a cabin in western Montana. Langford listed it in a transaction from 4 years ago. It was labeled D13. We didn't think much of it until we pulled satellite images." He tapped the screen. The aerial view showed a clearing surrounded by forest and a single figure standing near the tree line. "It's a long shot," he said. Monroe tightened her vest. "That's what Titan's best at." They left at dawn. Montana was wild, cold, and remote. The road to the cabin twisted through mountains and frost-lined trees. By the time they arrived, the sun was low and the air bit at their skin. Titan stepped out of the SUV, nose high, breath steaming. No barking, no pacing. He just walked. Monroe followed, through trees, across a frozen creek, past an abandoned woodpile. Then he stopped. Ahead, beside a dying campfire, stood a boy, no older than 10, shirt too thin, eyes dark with caution. He didn't move when Monroe approached. He didn't speak. Titan moved forward slowly and sat at the boy's feet. The boy knelt and placed a hand on the dog's head, then whispered, "You came." His name was Daniel. He'd been missing since 2021, taken while riding his bike home from school in Spokane. His disappearance had baffled local law enforcement. Until now. He'd escaped from the cabin 6 months ago, he said. He'd been surviving alone in the woods ever since. He didn't trust people, didn't know who to believe. But Titan, he trusted. "He's real," the boy said once back at the field office. "He was in my dream. Same vest, same scar. I knew if he found me I'd be safe." Monroe knelt down beside him. "You are safe now." Daniel was the final piece. With his rescue, the FBI confirmed and closed the last lead on Langford's coded logs. Every transfer on the list had been tracked, every location raided, every known accomplice arrested or identified. Langford himself had no more bargaining power. He was sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms without parole. And across America, parents who had once lost hope found something else entirely: closure. A month later, Monroe, Keene, and Titan were invited to a national forum on child protection and K-9 operations. Emily, Rowan, and Daniel sat on stage with them. The room was packed: journalists, officers, social workers, survivors. Monroe took the podium and cleared her throat. "I've worked with police dogs for 15 years, she began. "I've seen them track narcotics, find bombs, detect trauma. But what Titan did, what he kept doing, that wasn't training. That was heart." She paused. He remembered a scent from 7 years ago. He recognized something none of us could see, and because of that, children who were forgotten. Our home. She turned to Titan sitting beneath the stage. "Hero doesn't even begin to describe you." The applause was thunderous, but the real moment happened afterward. When the room emptied, and Monroe sat alone with Emily on the auditorium steps. "I still don't sleep much," Emily admitted. Monroe nodded. "Me neither." "You think it ever goes away?" Monroe looked out at the empty seats. "I don't think it goes away. I think it changes shape, and we learn how to carry it." Emily rested her head on Monroe's shoulder. "You think he'll forget us?" she asked, motioning to Titan. Monroe smiled. "He'll never forget. That's kind of his thing." That evening, as the sun set over the Colorado hills, Monroe took Titan for one last walk before retiring him from active duty. He had earned it: the medals, the recognition, the silence. She tossed a ball one last time into the tall grass. He fetched it like always. When he came back, he sat at her feet. She knelt beside him, looked him in the eye, and whispered, "You found them all. Every single one. Because of you, they're home. Thank you for following this powerful journey of hope, heartbreak, and heroism. At Heroes for Animals, we believe that behind every rescue is a soul that refused to give up, whether it walks on 2 legs or 4. Now, we'd love to hear from you. If you had the chance to honor a real-life hero, animal or human, who would it be and why? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's keep the stories going."